Well, I'm back with an interview with Tim Kintz, who is the head of the Tim Kintz Group, one of the top sales trainers in the automotive field. We are talking today about training, coaching, and how to develop a sales team that generates consistent results and not getting satisfied with the status quo. He's going to talk about how baseball and his career playing collegiate level ball helped impact him, as well as his journey from being in the car business to being one of the top sales trainers for an organization to going out on his own. But more importantly, he's going to give you some tips to help your team be better at what they do and generate those consistent results. So let's jump into today's episode with Tim Kintz. Right from there. Okay, so let me count you in. We'll do it without glasses. Get my timer going here so I know what's going. All right, so here we go. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to another episode of You're in Charge Now What? I'm your host, Glenn Pasch, and as you know, the goal of this channel is to help those of you leading teams generate consistent results. Each week, we're going to focus on a few different tips and strategies, either myself or, like today, with my guest. We're going to give you tactical advice that you can apply right now that, as I said, you can generate consistent results, get great performance from your teams because we can't do it alone. So if you're new to the channel, just click the subscribe button. Love you to share this out. There's a lot of great information, and why I put this channel together is there's a lot of people out there that are in positions, but then left on their own to figure it out. But that's what we're here to do. We're trying to help you be able to gain these skills so that your job is secure and what you deliver to your organization is recognized. So, as I said in the teaser, really excited about having my good friend Tim Kintz back. He is one of the top trainers out there in the automotive space, helping build sales teams. Just before we click the record button, we were just talking because my company as a digital agency, as Tim said, he goes, you're the one who generates those opportunities for the client. His job is to help them through processes and coaching and development, maximize those opportunities. So Tim, thank you again for being here. And before we dive in, just take 30 seconds just to give the audience a little update on, again, who you are, what you do, and then we're diving in.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Tim Kintz, president of Kintz Group. We do pretty much anything that has to do with the front end side, sales side, training managers, salespeople, BDCs on processes. It's like you said, it's you help generate the leads. We help convert the leads into sales and revenue and then manage those leads long term. It's one thing to have technology. It's a whole other thing to have the people be able to execute that technology. That's a challenge.
That's a great way to put it, because whenever we talk, offline at conferences or just the different things that are going on, everyone's talking about technology and digital. End of the day, we still need people. It's still a people business, even with COVID and, locking down some, for a period of time where people couldn't just wander into the showroom. They had to have appointments. You still had to have people answering those phones, still had to communicate to the customers and provide value. So let's kick it off this way, Tim, because you are such a well-known trainer. Before we dive into how you do or what you see when you go in there, tell me a little bit about how you got started. I mean, in both in automotive, but how did you move to where you are now, where you were a salesperson or you worked with a agency, or tell people your story of how you got to where you are right now.
Quick backstory. I grew up in a little small town outside of St. Louis and played baseball and was lucky enough to get a scholarship. I went out and played in Arizona in college, played out there for 3 years, and then transferred, played a year in California, and got invited to Alaska to play summer league baseball. And they invite college kids up and they get you a job, get you a host family, and you play baseball at night, work during the day. And the job I picked was washing cars at the Honda and Acura store. Hell, I thought driving around new cars was a lot better than driving a frozen hamburger patty truck around for Burger King delivering food every day. So
Right.
I was doing that, and, you know, I was getting old, 22 at that time, got hurt again. I knew I wasn't making the big leagues at that point. That part of my dream, you know, I knew I was going to be a big leaguer. Well, that dream was done, and I had to figure out what was next. And kind of like so many people in the car business, a buddy of mine tricked me into selling cars. Guy that was selling there became a manager, or he was going to become a manager, and he talked me into selling cars instead of playing minor league baseball for $750 a month. And he made me go to Kenny Shoes for a few months to learn to sell, because that was his background. And Kenny's, every morning they would train for 30 minutes before they pulled the gates up in the malls. And I didn't know what selling was, but I knew what training was. That was my background in baseball. You train 98% of the time, play 2% of the time. And then he brought me back over when he got promoted, started out selling, you know, the normal process, F&I, sales manager, then became GSM, and I went to NADA Dealer Academy in Virginia, the one-year school. And when I graduated, I realized I didn't want to be in Alaska anymore. I did my time, 11-year sentence. And I was running a dealer group, sold a lot of cars. I was just done with 30 below zero stint for 2 weeks, and I applied for Joe Verdi. And I applied because I was scared to death to speak in front of people. Public speaking was not I didn't like it. My salespeople were one thing. I had 60 guys. I could fire them at any time. That wasn't public speaking. It was getting up in front of people I didn't know. And I did that for 13 years, you know, and it's the old do what you fear and you'll conquer fear. And after 13 years of that, I had my buddy wanted me to go run his Ford store for a year. I needed a change. I realized the industry was evolving, and I was pretty much teaching the same stuff that I was trained on 20 plus years prior to that. And that was probably the best thing I did, getting back, running a store, using technology, just CRMs and vAuto, and seeing how technology had to be integrated into the sale process, right? Technology didn't sell the car, but it could help you or it could hurt you depending on how you used it. And after a year of that, my wife hated Oklahoma, and that was fine. So I ended up by accident really starting the Kintz Group. And I saw the need to speed the velocity of the selling process up while integrating technology and not sacrificing the integrity of selling. You know, you can speed a deal up, but by not demoing somebody, but all you're going to do is make it harder in the negotiation later on. Right. And I think that year back in the store was the best thing I ever did. And I committed to myself when I started Kintz Group was to be in dealerships regularly, shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow with the guys, so I know what's going on in customer trends, technology trends. And if you're not in stores regularly, it's really hard to know what the hell's going on in the car business now. It's not cookie cutter like it was when we started.
Right. Man, there's so many different things right there that we can touch on, and we're going to touch on a variety of them. So let me just take a step back, because you mentioned two things that I don't want to just gloss over. One was in sports, the philosophy of training 8% of the time to play 2%.
Yeah.
But when we both know in dealerships, it's almost the reverse. It's 2% training and 90% because everybody just is out there trying to figure it out on their own. When you go into a dealership and try to move that average a little bit, where it's maybe not 98.2, but maybe if we could get to 10%, 25%, or some form of it, what are some of the obstacles that you face bringing that sense of, we got to practice more before, you know, we don't want to practice on our customers. Right. You know, that's the worst place to practice. What are some of the obstacles that you face, and then what is your counter argument to that? So really the only obstacle is habits, right? We haven't done it. It's not something we do. And if we do it, it's not any good. It's just, we tell them instead of sell them, right? They're told instead of sold on why this is a better process. And I think a lot of in our businesses, I think there's so many overachievers. There's so many people in the retail car business that we're probably achieving more than we ever should have achieved based on our education level. Right. Our incomes, you know, I went to college for 4 years and stayed eligible to play baseball all 4 years. So you had to keep your GPA up.
but I don't have enough credits to get a 2-year degree. So I'm no book smart guy at all. And when you're way above your potential and you start making $100,000, $120,000, $150,000 a year, you're like, look, don't screw with me.
Right.
I'm making good money. I'm doing better than all of my friends from the past. It's working. I don't want to change. And I think it's fear of, oh crap, I want to see it work before I try it. Instead of the mindset of I have to learn it, make it work. You have to have the guts to do it. And I think it's really the habits and it's fear of doing something different and something new.
And
the only way to break that is.
Yeah, because you also said something about, tell them versus sell them. But do you think it's also tell them versus show them? Because I think in sports, a lot of times, your coach is right next to you and they're, actually physically moving in baseball, actually physically moving your feet to say, no, this is the way it is, or moving your hands to say, here's the bat, or holding the ball. So they're showing you so it locks in versus telling you, which is where the frustration is. Yes, I definitely get the selling part of what's in it for you to get people motivated to change. But I also think there's a lot, and that's why I think you're so successful in your business is what you said, I'm shoulder to shoulder with them. So it's not just I'm going to bring you in the room and lecture and then go, see ya. You're going to go out and watch them and say, no, watch what I did. Here, let me do it. You watch me. Now, do you see what I did? I think there's that. And I think there is that fear of things are going well. I think, though, to your point is, I think a lot of dealerships sometimes are successful in spite of themselves because, we can generate as an agency. I'll generate a lot of opportunities. For some reason, we're happy with 10% sales out of all of them, or, setting appointments for, hey, man, if we can get to 20% or 25%, that's good. And you're thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute, that means 9 out of every 10 person who raise their hand are out, right? That to me is maybe you're not as successful as you thought. Yes, you are making money, but you could be doing more. And that's probably still a very tough conversation to have with you.
That means you got a 70 or 80% loss ratio.
Exactly.
Right? We don't look at that, but I think it's 2 parts, right? Number one is if you don't make the time to do training right, you'll never find the time to do it over. So training has to be the priority. And when I go in dealerships, I let the guys know we do training and we'll do it off site because nothing gets done there when I'm in if we do it at the store.
Right.
Never had an appointment, all of a sudden has appointments. And we practice and we role play. And, the last place I went to, I told them we're going to go as fast as we can. But what happens in between visits? When I leave, it's what's going to determine how fast we can get through the selling process and learn it. And it's having a discipline. Number one, discipline to do training every day. 30 minutes, keep it short, keep it tight, make 50% of your training practice, not just telling, right? Because I always separate training versus coaching, right? Training is giving knowledge. Coaching is developing skills.
Right.
And we have to separate those two. I have to teach you something new, then I have to coach you as you're doing it to be able to use it, right? You have to recognize the skills being effective. Wow, that's good. I want to use it. So that means as a manager or video, you have to demonstrate a skill, a close, whatever it is. That opens up their mind and saying, man, I'd love to have that with customers. Then they have to internalize it. They have to say it over and over again where it's memorized, where it's just instinct. Then they customize it, meaning they make it sound like their own. I think some guys think that they'll take a script and customize it means changing words. No, customizing it makes it sound like you. If Alan Jackson and Beyonce each sing the national anthem, they don't sound the same.
Right.
But the words are the same. It's
exactly.
The same thing with scripts. You make it you, but that doesn't mean you change the words.
Yeah, I've always said to people is that you and I could sell differently. And we will sell different because our personalities are a little bit different.
Right.
But if I strip away your personality and I strip away my personality, we should see more or less the same framework underneath. But I think to your point, and I've said this multiple times to groups that I've been brought into and I've written about this, and it's just in my brain that with young kids, I have 2 young boys, one's going into 8th, one's going into 10th, but all through their lives, the way they've been educated to do things is they've been told something and then they practice it, right? They come home and they do their math problems and they do it in front of someone. And when someone says, well, wait a minute, let me show you where you made your mistake. Now do it again. And no matter what we did, whether you liked it or not, be it was some teachers just made you memorize things and go over and over and over and again so you could spit it out. Other people allowed you your interpretation and they gave you a framework. But the key was there was always that interaction, like you said, that involvement. And if we all think of our favorite teachers or our favorite coaches in sports, they took it a step further and were really involved in you and pushed you. Wasn't always easy, but you look back and you say, thank you for doing that. But for some reason, when we get to be 18 or when we get out of college and we get into the work environment, for some reason, we all think that people learn differently now. They, like to your point is, everybody, as soon as they get into the work environment, they learn just by me telling them something and automatically it's supposed to register and off they go and it's perfect. I struggle with that too, with that idea of coaching is, if you were taught this whole way, shouldn't we continue it? Yes, maybe not, some variation of it, but if I'm not going to hold you accountable to learning it and be involved in you coaching your success, how can I expect you, or how can I expect the team to deliver consistent results? It's a crapshoot. I mean, do you agree?
It's a repeatable process, but I think part of that though is there's very little structure that I can say, here is your curriculum, here's your teaching tools.
Right.
Now use these to help develop your salespeople. Where is that in most places? And all those things you're talking about is what I implemented, because I'm going in dealerships. In the past, my old company, we were hotel trainers. We stood up, we did a 2-day or 3-day scripted class to 50 or 60 people, and then flew to the next city. When you're going in dealerships every single month, you have to be creative. You have to make it fun. There's got to be competition. There has to be recognition. So I've done exactly what you have. My KintzNow, my online training platform, is that recognize it, right? See, I'll roll through a close and they're, okay, that's good. But now what? Just because they heard it doesn't mean they know it. Now they need the script.
Sorry to interrupt, but do you think your business is, I don't want to say better now, but better now, I'm going to say, because you realize that me, you, or any of us, if we're just standing in a hotel room or standing in a workshop at a conference and we go, bleh, and whether you do a 3-day intensive thing like that, without going to help them implement it into their day-to-day and figure out more or less what their day-to-day is, to be able to say, oh, I see, okay, we got to adjust this to make sure you're successful. Do you think that addition of now you going into the stores has resulted in more stickiness and better results for you as an organization than just a hotel trainer?
Without a doubt. I still do, well, right now we're paused a little bit, but we still do seminars and stuff. And, I try to do them at Topgolf, so they're more fun. And I'm a huge competition fun. I like bringing that back into the store because people are learning when they're having fun. But, I can give you a bunch of information, and it takes a unicorn that's going to be able to take that, dissect it, put a plan together, and execute it when they get back.
Right.
Too often it's like the dog that caught the car. It's like, now what? And when they get back, and then life hits them. They've got heat customers, desking deals, and nothing really changes. They just got jacked up for a couple days, and that adrenaline wears off in about maybe a week if we're lucky. But it's being back in there, repetitive. And look, I created, obviously the online training, but you're talking about your son. I was sitting one day with my son doing flashcards for math. Right? You've done them. And that's how we all learn. That was the foundation of it's active recall. So you can actively recall something. It's problem solving, but active recall. And I'm like, why the hell don't we have these? So I have a flashcard I call closer cards, but for questions, for feature advantage benefits, for bypassing, and for closes.
Sure.
Because if you think, you stink. It's got to be your instinct, right, with these skills. But if I don't have the flashcards to memorize the script and then me and you sit across from each other and work on them, then it makes it really hard. And then I brought volleyballs in that are the same thing, questions, fabs, bypass, closing. And then we stand up and we start throwing the ball around and trying to catch each other off guard. And that creates reflex skills.
Right.
So the flashcards internalize it. The volleyballs now, whether it's on the showroom or out on the lot, doesn't matter where you're practicing. Now it's starting to create those reflex skills, and that's what you need to sell.
See, what I like about that, what I really like about that volleyball thing, and I agree with you. I've worked in BDCs and I worked in customer service, phone rooms for years, and that was very similar. We had responses. If someone says this, you start, like your first sentence is this, and then evolve into that. But it was literally walking up to people and just in meetings just wrote, Tim, if I say this, what do you say? Without even prepping you, and your brain just has to go, ugh. But what I like about that is the piece that I think is great is that because you throw it to somebody and it's just a quick reaction, you have to read the question and then answer. It allows you not to interrupt the customer. When the customer's saying something to you, you're not in the back of your head, prepping, what am I going to say? And, you're prepared, you're confident where you actually then can listen, because then you go, I don't really care. Whatever you can ask me, I have an answer. And that's a beautiful place to be, because then you can just settle in and have a conversation versus, I don't know, what are they supposed to say? And that it takes time to get there. And I love that type of constant.
What's the option?
Yeah.
You pay the price now, you pay now and play later, or you play now and pay later, right? You either put the time in. I think the hardest part on practicing selling scripts, BDC scripts, whatever scripts they are, is it's boring, it's mundane, it's repetitive. There is no instant gratification. If I go hit golf balls, I get to see the flight of the ball. If I'm practicing shooting free throws, I either make it or I don't, but I get instant feedback. With scripts, you don't get instant feedback.
Right.
It's a long-term pay now and play later type of thing. And if you don't have the intestinal fortitude, if you don't have the mental strength, the power through the boredom of practice, then you're never actually going to learn these things.
Well, I think what that comes down to is having the coach. I think it's also to what, circling back to what we were talking about earlier, it's that idea of getting started. It's but 6 months afterwards, if it's routine, and to your point is if we're making it fun and we're having some competition or keeping score, but it can be a little mundane, and that's fine, but that's no different than doing laps or hitting a million ground balls at you a million times. You can see the ball and you're catching, but it is that reflex action. The key, I think, also, and why I really like what you're doing in terms of being in the stores, is how many managers, when you leave, right, how many managers get out from behind wherever they are, their desk, their office, to go out and watch how the salespeople are playing the game, so to speak, and listening, so that then afterwards they say, hey, Tim, I heard you use that answer very good. Or I heard this very good. Try to catch them doing well, versus the only thing that we judge them on is their numbers, not their execution, because then I'm going to do whatever I can to get. If we think of it like kids, whatever is going to make you as my manager say, great job, Glenn, I'm going to do it. If it's execution, great. If it's just numbers, well, then I'm going to do whatever I mean, screw up everything, but look at my numbers.
Yeah.
And that's where it also lies on the management to reinforce the execution and how we're playing the game. And there are times where you can say, hey, Tim, you did everything you possibly could, but I made the decision not to take the trade in. I made the decision that you did everything you did. I made a business decision that wasn't it. And that, in my mind, should be good as a sale.
Yeah, it's, I guess a couple things there is, number one, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Okay? Yeah. You don't just start, ready, fire, aim, just get it going. But two, as managers, we got to be present, right? How do kids spell love? Time. And you got to be there. And like you said, we got to catch people doing things good, not always catch them doing things bad, but also recognize them for success. What's the public, some people care more about the public recognition and peer pressure than they do the paycheck. Paycheck's
right.
going to take care of itself.
Right.
Then again, that's why I bring in things like we got a heavy hitters bats where there's 3 different bats. I mean, you have certain gross, you get to autograph a bat in front of all your peers, and we have a scorecard, and they end up with $200,000, $300,000 bats hanging on the wall. And They have fun with that.
Sure.
There's closing ratios. We got a fire extinguisher for the guy with the worst closing ratio every week because he's burning through ups, and we got a dumbbell for the guy that's got the best closing ratio every single week. And they trade it off and they have fun with it. It's got to be recognition, but that comes down fundamentally for managers is understanding that everybody has an emotional bank account. And my job as a manager is to make deposits in your emotional bank account, because there's times where you're going to lock people's heels and you're going to have to make withdrawals out of that and make some tough decisions with straight talk. But if you haven't been making deposits, positive deposits into their emotional bank account, then you're going to be overdrawn. And then that's when you have demotivated sales teams that don't want to learn anymore because you're in the red, you're overdrawn, and that just causes the turnover. So what are you doing to build the emotional bank account? Are you trading wins? Are you putting your guys in positions to succeed? Or are you throwing them out there in positions you know they're going to fail, but, well, they'll learn as they go?
Right.
Well, crap. They're going to learn how to lose. They're going to learn how to fail, and then they'll become terrorists throwing little bombs, blowing stuff up behind your back and bobbleheading you to your face because they're not winning. They're not seeing results. I always tell the guys, start with the things that have the least amount of pain that will have the greatest impact.
Right.
You start on that's going to have the least amount of pain with the greatest impact, get some wins, then it gets easier and easier because you create a culture of winning and a culture of success. It doesn't happen right now. Too often we got a culture of complacency in the stores, not a culture.
And I think it's a complacent. I think to your point, it's this idea of being involved. You know, sometimes again, that's why I love that what you said earlier on. It's this idea of, you know, training versus coaching. That's the same thing as managing and coaching. I got to put my manager hat on, which is let me go look at numbers. Let me go look at this. Let me sit behind my desk and I have to do certain things that are managerial, managing numbers, managing things. You coach people. You don't manage people. You coach people. Problem is that I don't think enough managers look at that to say, this is my time and literally schedule it somewhere on their calendar to say, okay, from 10 to 12, we're busier. I'm out on the floor helping. Even if you're just walking around and you're watching, your team is going, oh, Tim's out here with us. He's on the field with us. If I need him, he's there. I may not need him, but the fact that he's there versus when I turn around and go, I need Tim, Tim's nowhere to be found. He doesn't care.
Don't you hear that, though? Well, that's just micromanaging my guys. Well, yeah, that's your job. You're supposed to manage your guys. If you don't manage from the desk, get rid of chair ass and get out on the floor.
But see, I think it's changing that vernacular, like you said. It's not micromanaging. Why is it micromanaging? If I told you you're a coach, do you think that, you know, the coach of whatever team, you know, Celtics or the Heat, they're getting ready to play tonight, do you think those coaches are micromanaging those players or are they helping them succeed? Like, that's a difference. Micromanaging is usually because you're a horrible manager. You didn't set up the processes. You didn't build the structure, so I have to go out there and nitpick and catch, and I'm constantly doing that versus I built a structure, trained my people, you know, told them, coached them how to be successful, and then go, great, I'm getting on the sideline, go play, but I'm here watching you. So I think that's that idea of micromanaging. You don't understand you don't really understand what your job is. Like
right. They have a title of manager, they're not a leader. And, you know, I'm writing a new book right now on leadership. It's Fearless. And, you know, I talk about how leadership's overrated. And I don't really mean it's overrated, but the word's overused. Because what the hell does leadership mean in a car dealership? Yeah, all those cute little buzzwords and stuff, that's fine. But how do I pull it off in a store? And look, I break it down to 4 simple areas. You lead. Okay, leading is having that vision, having that big picture, having a target that everybody is aiming for and has bought in, right? You lead people. You also manage, right? So leadership quadrant, you manage things. You know probability, statistics, and tendencies. And you're organized, therefore your people are going to be more organized. Some people get a day's worth of use out of a week, other people get a week's worth of use out of a day. But that's an important trait of a manager, is to be able to manage.
Right.
And then you also have to train, transfer of knowledge, and then you got to be able to coach. That's developing skills. But all 4 of those in the leadership quadrant, lead, manage, train, coach, are critical for us now, because I think more than ever, we got to learn to do more with less. the old mindset of flooding the floor and, hire them in masses, train them in class, and fire their asses type of mindset, and see if they work out. And if they don't, we'll bring somebody else on. We want to sell 100. We got to have 10 guys. Bull crap. You got a 20 car guy. Let's produce more of them.
Right.
And then bring the right people on. You ask managers, ask next time you're with them, are you better off being short-staffed or wrong-staffed?
No, I think, listen, I agree. I think with all of this new technology, I think the fact that dealers over these last few months had to do more with less because they furloughed people, showrooms were shut, they had to rethink their whole process to say, I had a dealer at our conference, the MSC, who said, this was in July, he goes, over the last 3 months, dealers have given out more information over the phone and over email than they have for the previous 30 years. Meaning that's the only way they could sell the car, is that there were no, hey, I got to wait till you come here, because there was not that. Yeah. So you had to do this. And most of my dealers were saying we sold maybe 80% of our pre-COVID levels with 40% less of our staff. And they all started rethinking that, part because the managers were there and they didn't have distractions. So they were doing end-to-end deals or really helping the salespeople that they had to complete everything. All of a sudden their brains are going, when we're bringing people back, we should be bringing people back that can do more, to your point. They can do more. Why do we have to go back and forth to the desk 87 times? If I train my salespeople to get a good number, and they do one confirmation, great. Or if they can do some of the F&I process, or at least have conversations about all of these, then when there's an F&I manager, then maybe it's less time over here. So to your point, I think customers are going to be expecting this. I think dealers are starting to look at their overhead because they had to during this time. And they're going, why do we have all these people? Part of it was they could flood the floor because they weren't paying anything but all commission. So, hey, if you didn't make money, no skin on my teeth. That's getting harder and harder to staff because people are looking at you like, I can work all week and not make money? No, sorry, that's not working. So you're right. I have to start taking all my 10 car guys and gals and say, can we get to 12? And really looking at what we were talking about earlier, looking at the opportunities they had instead of just, hey, I sold 10. Well, no, theoretically, you should have sold 13 or 14. Right. Let's go fix that, versus it's contingent on me to go to Glenn and say, here's more money, generate more leads that we'll put through a sieve and we'll sell in spite of ourselves. But theoretically, we're underperforming by 20, 30, maybe even 40% on the opportunities we have. And that's where that targeted training from you comes in to say, there's your issue. There's your issue. Let's fix it.
And I'm going out to a friend of mine, Colin Sewell's dealership in Odessa next week. I was out there 3 weeks ago, and he realizes how important training is. He's created a culture of success, culture of training, culture of competition, but he knows it needs to always be pushed, and you got to keep trying. And we're going to be out there this next week. It's going to be all about managers and the leaders and helping them be better when they're sitting down with their people and having better vision and developing. Everybody's not going to be a 30-car salesperson, but my goal is to make you the best you can. Colin always says that we'll accept you how you are, but we care too much about you to let you stay that way. Yeah. And
great way to look at it.
And that's how he looks at every one of his people, that it's my job to make you better. And if you're not getting better, then I'm letting you down. Right. And it's personal responsibility. And he's got, I would argue, a team of top producers. They got their own separate wing at a dealership. They've got offices that have separate office for their assistants. They're doing 30, 40 cars a month. And they've got 7 or 8 guys that are in that level because they developed them. They didn't hire those guys and they were already selling 30 cars. But the difference is when they do hire a new person, they take their time, hire slow, fire fast, and when they bring you on, they onboard you and make sure you blend into the culture. And then when those people hit the floor, they're doing 12 to 15 a month right off the bat because that's what the culture is.
Right.
You put that same guy in a different store that, everybody's just kind of ragtag. Maybe you get 6 or 8 out of them when they first start.
Well, that's an interesting thing because there's 2 things for audience. Listen to what Tim just said. There's 2 things for three things in this situation. One, that is a leader. That gentleman is a leader because what he's doing is he has a process to bring someone in. He's investing in the training. He's not rushing it. He's not throwing you to the wolves. He's preparing you. It's no different than going to McDonald's. They have a system in place for you to learn so that when you, as they say, I can put a 16-year-old through this and they'll be successful. I can put a 60-year-old through this and they'll be successful because it's organized and there's no options. It's like, this is the way we do it. And we figured out how long the training needs to be and how we get them out there. The other piece that's really phenomenal is, notice what he said. I got my 40 and 30 and 40, those top performers in a separate wing so they feel. But what he didn't say was, okay, Tim, don't talk to them because they're great. He's saying, well, maybe they can even get incrementally better or just stay sharp, right? You know, even the professional athletes, you know, even if you're scoring 30 a game, you'll have highs, lows, you know, whatever. But it's that consistency. There's always a coach to keep you sharp, to stay at your level versus if I don't pay attention to them, that 30 becomes 29. Becomes 28, and you can blame everything about it, but eventually you're losing productivity and maybe they settle at 25, but they, with Tim's attention every single month, that's the other thing, if you listen to it, he's going back every single month. Yeah. Left to their own devices, right? I always think it's like an escalator. You get them up on that first level, then we get them up on the next level, and then they start going down a little bit. They don't go all the way they were, and then the next time you come, we get them up to that next step. And they come down a little bit and we got to get them up here. And that's that constant investment of knowing this is valuable because either that's, we have other things that we need to do. So if I bring in him and his team, look at the return I'm getting because it's consistency. It's ongoing development. It's another voice.
Compounding interest. Compounding interest.
Yeah, it's compounded. I love that. Yep.
That's all this. Training gives back, and you don't have to spend it. You don't have the expense every month. You spend $50,000 in advertising, it sells you 100 cars. You want to sell those 100 cars next month, you better spend another 50 grand. Training, when they get better, they just keep getting better, and they get better, and they get better. And it's the discipline to do it every single day. It doesn't matter if you're a 30-car guy or a brand new guy that hadn't sold any cars. You're in training at 8:30. It's just what they do every single day. And
but think of what you said right there is that if I want to sell that 100 cars, I got to go spend the 50,000. But having that opportunity, well, maybe I'm going to be able now to sell 125 on that 50. What if I could sell that 125 on 45? Right? Because now I'm starting because I have a consistent process now, and it's not whatever chaos is going on, and it's just spin the wheel and let's see what month we have. But
those 30-car guys aren't worried about your 50 grand you spent in advertising because they're selling to their database and they're prospecting that they're doing on their own. So
right, but the more that you have, the more that you have, you build that consistent process for them. What happens is when they have conversations with me, I, as a marketer, have total confidence to go, great. You have a solid process. Now we can evaluate, does cars.com make sense? Does Auto Trader make sense? Does Car Guru? Does this lead source? We should spend more on Facebook because it's happening. Versus people are cherry picking. Well, I don't like those leads, so I'm not going to try, right? That's really the beauty of it is that if I can get training in there and I can increase the return, so to speak, the sales and the engagement, either I can cut back my money and keep that same number if that's you want, or if we keep this number, I'm going to get more out of it. But that's where sometimes everybody leans over and goes, marketing's not doing a great job. And I know how to look in the CRM. I've gone and worked with sales teams and I'm going, wait a minute here, we got a sieve over here leaking through here. And they're like, yeah, well, can you help?
My wife was my newspaper rep years ago when I was in Alaska running the dealer group. And I remember one time she came in and on Monday I said, yeah, the ad was okay. Got a lot of people, but nobody bought. So it didn't work. And she's like, no, it worked. You guys just suck at closing. And, that's kind of the reality, though. If they're in front of you, but you can't close them, then it's a you problem.
Well, that's what I try not to blame, like from my side. I ask those questions. I know there's some agencies that say that sometimes, but I try to extend and help because I'll go into CRM and I'll say, well, wait a minute. this last month, your appointment to lead ratio was only 18%. It should be at least 1 out of 3. Or all that was good, but do you had 100 people show up and you sold 25? Like, we should be
knowing the numbers.
Exactly. And I just ask the questions and say, are you having that conversation? And they say, well, what do you mean? And I say, well, okay, there's 75 people that didn't buy from you. I'll bet you half of them, you guys at the desk, made a decision, right? Not cosign, not enough down, trade value, whatever it is.
The salesperson made a decision because they thought they were too buried, never even.
Exactly. But I say, even if you throw those out, right? The old Joe Verity, cut it in half, throw those out. I said, there's still 35 opportunities that you need to dig in and say, where do we need to train? Did we follow our process of demos? Like you said earlier, did they skip the demo? Did they not do? Did they just check out and go, well, that person doesn't want it? Or did they let them leave? I gotta go talk to my wife, and they go, okay, see ya. And then either there's no follow-up to get them back in, whatever it is. But once you start peeling back that onion,
it's a numbers game. If you know the numbers, you control the game. If you don't know the numbers, the game controls you. I mean, it's that simple. You know the numbers, you can control the game. I know my probabilities, my tendencies, my statistics. So I know if I do X, this is going to happen. And if I do this, then we're going to get more results. But it's, do you know exactly how many leads you need to get every month through digital leads? Do you know of those leads, how many do we need to set appointments on to hit our unit goal? Of the appointments set, what is our exact number that we need to have show every month to be able to hit our unit goal?
And then I take it even a step further, and I'm sure you do, is I say, okay, well, great. We had one dealer I was working with, and they were in a subprime market. And I said, well, who handles these? And they said, well, these two, because they're really good. And that desk manager really knows. I said, okay, great. So then let's look at TrueCar, or let's look at, any of these other leads. Who gets them? They go, everybody. I'm like, why? I said, are there people that are doing better on these? Oh, well, those two people do really well with TrueCar. I'm like, then why aren't you funneling all of them to them? Well, no, everybody needs. I'm like, but do you give, and I try to walk them back. I said, do you give all of the, subprime to everybody? Well, no, that would be stupid. I wouldn't. I'm like, are you hearing yourself? And all of a sudden they go, oh, they started to pull the levers of not total specialization, but it's no different than people now creating internet teams and saying everybody can handle them. But if you're not at these metrics, then you're going to live on showroom ups because, we're losing money over here now. They're starting to realize the numbers.
I think there's a challenge though with that, don't you? That what's the difference between the internet lead and the walk-in customer? It's probably the same person. At some point, they might have been a digital inquiry. The crossover is so big, and by not cross-training salespeople to be able to handle internet leads too, now you're going to have sales against BDC, right?
Totally understand. I'm not saying I agree with it. They're sitting there thinking it's almost a penalty, but I always say everybody's an internet customer. It's that person who walks on the lot who doesn't have an appointment and they just didn't give you their name. They want to, in their mind, say, I'm in control of this versus I give you my name. Part of it is the reason I gave you my name the last time, you blew up my phone and sent me emails with 0 engagements, 0. It wasn't about me at all. All it was when you coming in, when you coming in, when you coming in. And people are like, can't deal with it. But you're right.
Yeah.
I like saying, listen, can you sort of tweak and play to your specialty? But yeah, that whole concept of you're penalized, you can only do that. I said, that's just silly too. Some dealers love it. They say, oh, that. I'm like, no, because then they're going to frustrate. It's stupid.
I spent the last 6 months creating an accountability and training tool for the digital leads where, literally we will score their digital leads, and everybody there's a scoreboard and shows who's the best and who's the worst at lead conversion, and whoever's available that is the best, that's who gets it, because internet leads, digital inquiries, are a privilege, not a right.
Sure.
And you have to earn the privilege to be able to get them, and it changes everybody's mindset. Digital communication isn't something that's a nice thing to have. It's a critical skill to every salesperson, whether you're on the floor, whether you're in the BDC or somewhere in the middle. Digital communication is selling in today's world.
And it's going to only get more because of the technology that's out there and the dependence, as we said earlier, of people being able to do more. Now, if I can sit on my couch and I can, play around with my payments, get a trade value, look at some F&I products, and I push a button and I send all that information to you, you better talk to me as if you received it. You better pick up my conversation. It's changing. To your point, it's changing the whole game. It isn't just, well, I'll wait. The days of we'll wait till you get here are fading away because more and more are embracing this technology here.
It's three ways, right? It's face-to-face selling, now digital retailing, which takes people involvement still, but it's digital retailing, and then e-commerce, click and buy. That's the smallest, but digital retailing is the fastest growing segment. Absolutely. And it encompasses communication with customers. And
it's having that conversation online as if they were standing in front of you, because they gave you information. I always say that cars.com lead or a third-party lead basically tells me that you're interested in the Ford F-150. Digital retailing lead is, I want to lease that for 36 months or finance that for 72 months, and I'm putting down this much, and my trade is going to be this, and I'm interested in this incentive program. That's a completely different amount of information, and I have to respond differently, or else people are going to go, then why did you make me do all this stuff, right? And
that all comes full circle to what we started talking about, is if you don't train and develop your team, then you're not going to succeed. If you hire a 30-car salesperson and they come to your dealership and sell 15, that means you're a 15-car manager. If you got a bunch of 20-car people, you're a 20-car manager. Talent does not equal success. Okay, just because you're talented doesn't mean you're going to be successful. You were talented selling doesn't mean you're successful as a manager.
Right.
You have to dig in, and you got to be willing to pay the price. And now you either do or you die.
It's happening right now where people are, as you said, there's a contraction in terms of the number of people that they need on the floor. So the strong and adaptable, not just the strong, because now there is a key of adapting, and the same thing with what technically a manager needs to focus on is evolving and changing as well. And automotive is starting to evolve to a point where, like you said, digital retailing, or this concept of, I agree with you, the number of people who want to fully buy online is still small, but it's the ones that say, oh, I can save time. I don't need to be in there for 5 hours. Awesome. Here's all my information. Here's what I want to do. At least let's start the conversation there, and it's evolving.
And don't tell them it's going to be fast. Spend time online with them, communicating really good, and then they show up at your dealership and you still take 4.5 hours to deliver the damn car.
Exactly.
That's still happening, and that drives me nuts, man.
Trust me.
Time is the number one commodity, and the last thing I want to give you is my time, and if it's not going to be productive and effective.
Absolutely. Well, let me just, as we wrap up, this has been awesome. We can sit here and go on and on and on. I got to bring you back another time, because the one part that we focus on is then I want to talk about in the future episode is, okay, just focusing strictly on that manager, right? We talk conceptually, but when you're going in and you're saying, okay, Mr. or Mrs. Manager, here's what we want to do. How do we do that? So I ask everybody as we sort of wind up on this, in all of your time, so playing sports, and I'm sure sports it's just apparent sports has had a big impact on how you approach your career and your life. What was one of the best things that someone told you that impacted you, that clicked in your brain, or you look back on and go, I actually listened without even listening? What's one thing that you could say that it was really impactful for you in your success?
My coach that I write about in my new book that'll be coming out, Coach Kazanis, CAC as we call them, he said, and I was a freshman right out of high school. I was cocky, I thought I was the best in the world. And he would remind us that he didn't care how we handled success, that anybody can handle success. Success is easy. It's how we bounce back from failures is what was going to determine how great we became. Mm-hmm. And life is a series of failures. Selling is a series of failures. Hell, managing is a series of failures. You got guys coming in hungover. You got guys that had a sick baby up all night. You've got guys that have an illness. You have guys that are going through depression right now because they were locked down. how do you, it's not easy. You're going to have a series of failures, but you use those failures to grow. And I think when you look at it, that yes, success is what you're supposed to do, celebrate it, but it's those failures that are going to keep moving you up and getting you better and better when you can bounce back from it.
Wow. Love that. That is a fantastic, that wraps up everything that we're talking today. That is fantastic advice. So thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate it. I'm glad we got this done today. And so just quickly before we wrap up and do the final little bit here, tell everyone how they can connect with you on social or where to find you and the Kintz Group.
I'm on all the social. It's LinkedIn, the Tim Kintz, or Tim Kintz on LinkedIn, Instagram, the Tim Kintz, Kintz Group, and Tim Kintz on Facebook. So all over. We've got a YouTube channel. And then you can go to KintzGroup.com. We've got all of our product on there. I can't not, got my new book.
Oh, listen, man, it's a great book.
Yeah, Closing and Negotiating with Purpose. If you want to be a better closer, better negotiator, it's what you need. It's a missing link for a lot of people. It's a lost art. And just shoot me an email. Easiest way to get a hold of me is instant messenger or direct message. And that's how we communicate as much as texting or phone calls or anything. So I'm always out there, answer your questions.
Great. I appreciate that. And I'm glad. And like I said, please, folks, take advantage of Tim's generosity. He does talk. He's not someone who's like, can't talk to you unless you're a client. He is out there truly being generous with his time and his help. And his book is really great. I'm down in my basement because my son is upstairs doing remote learning, and that's where the book is. But it is really great. I've read it. I've given it to my sales team because I think it's just really logical things, practical things that you can do. And it literally sounds just like Tim talking. So it's great. So again, thank you, Tim, so much. Again, everyone, if you've made it this far, I appreciate your time today. This is chock full. I hope you go back and watch it multiple times. Please share it. Please subscribe. As always, put your comments down below. Love to hear what you think of this, and if there's any topics that you'd like me to talk about, please do. So again, as I say at the end of every episode, you're in charge, but now Tim has given you a few new tools to help you become more successful. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks again, Tim. See you guys next time.